Much for coming. Really, this is an awesome space. It's really quite different. It's really nice. I won't do too much of an introduction. We have a full house, and we have a lot of opportunities here to hear about the RealArts internships, but I'm thrilled that you're all here. Today we have 5 of our past interns that represent a good sort of baseline of the opportunities that we offer. And the actual opportunities for 2019 will be announced on our website and spread widely within the next maybe week or two, so look for that. If you have particular questions about the application process, feel free to talk to myself or Mingo Reynolds or Stephanie Garcia after. Providing there's no lull, I would rather this be an opportunity to really hear about the internships themselves and the student experiences. Without further ado, I want to hand it over to Anthony DeCurtis, who is the faculty director of the RealArts Penn program and esteemed creative writing faculty in its own right. And thank you so much, Anthony.
Thanks. Thank you. Steamed and esteemed. RJ kind of said it all. There's, we have a group of interns here. These RealArts internships have been going on for a while here. It's been just a tremendously successful initiative that, that the writing program has launched, and the turnout here, I think, reflects that. These are very desirable spots. The idea grew out of a desire to, create the opportunity for people who are interested in writing, to find places where they can, get a look around the professional world that writing jobs exist in, and also at places where, I guess places that people who like to write would feel comfortable in, even if they're not directly, quote unquote, writing. As I think we all know, the definition of what writing is has been expanding and changing and over in recent years. And I think the range of these internships, reflects that. I mean, last year we had there are various production companies. There are publicity and promotion companies. There are magazines, websites. It's a really interesting range. Publishing companies as well. So we have 5 people with us here today, and we'll just start. Jamie, why don't you begin and tell us where you were and what you did?
I was interning at Small Press Distribution over in Berkeley. I was social media intern, and I worked in the book warehouse we have, which is Small Press Distribution is also it's a book distributing company for a lot of small presses around. It's around to keep small presses going, which is typically pretty hard because they have a hard time getting going, like Tin House or any of those other major publications. And so from my day-to-day was just tweeting and keeping all our social media going.
Great. Yeah. Lillian Light, who is at Downtown Bookworks. Lillian.
I'm Lily. I was at Downtown Bookworks last summer, which is a children's publishing house in New York. I kind of was doing everything. So anything from editing to posting on their Instagram pages to looking over Facebooks to learn, finding new people they can reach out to, new bookstores to sell their products. So whatever needed to be done was kind of what I was doing.
Thank you. Daniel Horowitz, who is at Doug Robertson Productions.
So my name's Daniel. I was at Doug Robinson Productions. They're known for the Goldbergs. That's pretty much their main thing. So my day-to-day was I would do book coverage, script coverage. I would read books and scripts that would come in and basically say whether or not they were good enough to make into either a series or film for the company. Other than that, there would be meetings that I would sit in on, listen to the executives kind of talk about what they're going to be doing for the day, what their plan was for the next few months. But yeah, it was a lot of coverage. It was a lot of meetings, but it was a lot of fun.
Thank you. And Hughes Ransom, who is at Nonfiction Unlimited.
Yeah, hi, I'm Hughes. I was at Nonfiction Unlimited. Yeah, and that I was a production runner, so mainly what I did was whenever my company would go into commercial productions, which is what they specialized in, I would sort of go on runs, do any tasks that they need me to do, client services, and just kind of maintain that professional vibe that the company wanted to give off to people who are visiting for production. So.
And Elias Katsis, who was at Warner Theatrical Ventures.
I'm Elias. I was at Warner Brothers Theater Ventures. So besides the day-to-day kind of office tasks that I did, I coordinated ticket sales for one of their productions that was happening in DC at the time. I would set up screening rooms for upcoming productions they had for potential producers and investors. I got a chance to redevelop scripts that were in development and listen to some new scores and songs and give some feedback on those, and had a small hand in their social media aspect. So whatever they kind of need me to do on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent. What I'd like to do now maybe is have each of you talk about, what you felt, the impact of the internship was on you. Maybe if it made, just kind of expanded your notion about, what this particular world is, or, what some of your experiences were like. But, how did it affect you? Why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so I think in my case in particular, just for your guys' sake, the internship that I did this summer is likely not going to be offered in the summer, but I will say that working at a production company, which is also being offered in other capacities, taught me a lot about just how creative industries and entertainment industries are also very professional industries that require a lot of the skills that other positions and other jobs would require. And I think that that kind of really cemented to me the idea of having a future in entertainment as being something that's like tangible and real. So I think that was probably the most influential thing.
Yeah. So the thing with Doug Robinson Productions, it's a very small production company, which I found to be very, very beneficial. I'd had internships where it was kind of like a bigger production company, but being in a very small environment, you get a better understanding of how the executives are thinking, what they're looking for, and it kind of gave me a newer, I think just a deeper perspective of exactly what gets made, how it gets made, why it gets made, and I think especially with the internship at Doug Robinson, you get a very unique opportunity to really talk with the people who are making the films and the TV shows, rather than at other production companies where you're only going to be reading script coverage and then handing it off to assistant who's going to hand it to whoever else is there.
I guess similarly, Downtown Bookworks is also very small. So it really I was able to see kind of the different hats people wore, but also how specialized each individual was. And the speed at which things were turned around, which was pretty incredible. So I was there for 10 weeks, and we had a meeting in my first week to discuss, book titles that they wanted to put out the new year, and there was a finished product by the end of the summer. So that was really cool to see the fact that, that there was a book, the idea was thought of, it was written, they had found an illustrator who had illustrated it, and it was pretty much ready to go to print by the end of the summer. That was pretty cool.
So my office that I was in was also very small. I was only the third person in the office. So a lot of what I learned was more so on the production side than on the creative aspect of theater. And my bosses were aware of this, and they knew that I actually am more interested in going into the creative side of it. They knew I had a lot of theater experience, but they thought it would be a very valuable internship for me to learn how that other side works. And it was really amazing to see how the producers work on their shows. And I not only got to learn from them, but also the other people on the floor. So there were a lot of other departments on our floor, whether it was TV or casting or publicity, and getting to talk to them was also really great. So it was kind of seeing how everything all kind of comes together. And I got to see shows happening in 3 different stages. So they were planning a tour of a production that had just closed on Broadway. They were in the middle of an out-of-town tryout in D.C., and then they were starting to go into rehearsals for another D.C. tryout. So it was a very busy summer in 3 very different stages of the process.
My office was, like everyone else's, really small. It was only about 12 people, including the warehouse staff who were always floating around, never really... they were felt but not really seen. But I think it was a super valuable internship because it was a new approach to the literary arts for me, because a lot of the times it can be super academic and can feel pigeonholed in the institution, and this was a super interesting way to meet writers out in the world and to get a new perspective on how you can be a writer in a social world and in a collective environment.
Yeah, I think that in thinking about your own applications, there are benefits and to each of like a large organization obviously has a lot going on, and maybe it's more established also, and there's more to see. A smaller organization needs you. Chances are that their situation is going to be less structured. The more that you show any kind of initiative, the more that you're going to be given to do, and so that each of those situation, one kind of more structured and larger, the other kind of smaller and hopefully sort of more nimble. Think about where you might be most comfortable when you think about your applications and where you might want to end up. I think probably should mention Penn helps underwrite this. There are pretty generous cash grants, I guess maybe is the word, that go along with these things, that help make these situations more possible for you. And also Mingo and RJ, you take great care dealing with these organizations directly and intervening if necessary. Just trying to find out what your experience is like, trying to find out if the organization is happy with you, if there's issues that arise. You're not there just kind of flying on your own. You have some institutional and personal support here. It's not typically necessary, but it's nice to know that it's there, and occasionally it does become necessary, and it's been very helpful. So we have a lot of people here, obviously. So maybe I'd like to just open the floor maybe to your questions, and certainly we can do some follow up and have our panel sort of discuss further their own experiences if that's desirable as well. So are there any questions on your part? Yes.
Hi, yeah. I was just wondering if there were any experiences or classes either at Penn or outside of it that you felt helped prepare you to kind of take on what was going on in the internships.
Someone would like to start? Or maybe there were none. Just saying.
I, in my application, actually talked about Jack Spicer, whom I'm now researching, and I encountered him in Charles Bernstein's class in the spring, and it turns out that my boss, Trisha, who had been a Penn undergrad, had written her thesis her senior year on Jack Spicer, so it was a super intimate connection through a class that I made, and I did not expect it to take me so far.
I took an art of editing course with Professor Block. I think it's taught in the spring, which pretty much just goes through the proper ways of editing and different levels of editing, and different, how you're supposed to edit things based off of the genre that they are, the differences between editing and copy editing. So, for something in publishing, that lends itself very well, since a lot of what I was doing was pretty much editing.
Yeah, so I think that for anyone looking for any opportunities in the entertainment industry, definitely take Art and Biz of Film with Van Cleves. It just gives you a very good baseline for what happened in the industry that kind of like, that way you're not kind of like going in blind to whatever internship you end up doing.
Yeah, I mean, I am having trouble thinking of a specific class, and I think that's partially like the value of the internship too. You know, I think what I got out of the experience was something that added on to my class experience rather than like interwove with it, you know? So I think, I think I learned a lot of skills that have made me a better student and also a better intern or employee or whatever. So yeah.
It's not quite a course, but I'm on the board of a theater group on campus, and actually a lot in my interviews I spoke about that. Even though, you know, there's Warner Brothers, which is this massive company, and then you get this small college group, there's actually a lot of interesting similarities between the two and how they run. You know, putting up a show has to happen if you're investing millions of dollars or if you get some money from Student Activities Council. So they happen both ways. So that was a lot of kind of Penn experience I talked about in my application and interview.
And working on my usual assumption that there's no occasion that doesn't lend itself to self-promotion, I teach a seminar called The Arts and Popular Culture. A lot of the guests that I bring in about 10 guests a semester. A lot of them are people like Morgan Neville, from the director of 20 Feet from Stardom, and the Mr. Rogers documentary that's out now, who is, as it happens, a Penn alum, but also a friend, and he's somebody who has visited the class. You know, today, Rob Chernow, who's the president of creative production at A&E Networks, will be visiting, but also, you know, like writers and editors. And the point of the class, in a lot of ways, is to try to, create links between what people are doing here, which can, I think as someone mentioned, often seem pretty rarefied, and actual things that you might do out in the world later. So, that's one thing to look into, if you're, of a mind to. Do we have other questions?
So this is just a quick question. What year are all of you in college?
And what sign also?
I'm a senior.
I'm also a senior.
I'm also senior.
Senior.
I'm a sophomore.
Oh. Interestingly, I mean, typically in the applications, there has historically, and certainly Mingo and RJ can weigh in here. Historically, there's been a desire to emphasize, people who are between their junior and senior year, just because, there are a lot of applications, and if it's close, obviously we, try to support the best candidate, but. There's a feeling like, everybody, the younger people have another shot. Whereas, obviously, if you're going into your senior year, this is, there have been some exceptions, but for the most part, it's kind of, the last chance that you'll have to get one of these things. So if, if you're neck and neck with somebody, junior who's going to be a senior is more likely to get the spot. But, we try to look to make the best fits. I mean, we want everybody to be happy. We want you to be happy. We also want these people who are opening up these spots for us to be happy. So, it's in everybody's interest to put you somewhere, where you'll be able to do something that you care about and do some work that will help out the organization that you'll be interning at. Anyone else? Yes. Somebody will bring you a microphone.
Did any of these internships kind of affect, since most of you are seniors, the jobs that you're going to or looking into after you graduate?
Yeah, so I got to actually meet some people at a theater publishing company, and my boss from the summer knows some of the people in that aspect of the industry, and like a music specialist or copyist is a position that I didn't quite know existed and to what extent, so that's something I'll definitely be looking more into when the application opens up.
I think one thing that was cool for me being between my junior and senior year was that a lot of people I knew who had just graduated and had jobs out in Los Angeles were doing their thing and, kind of adjusting to their actual work life. So I heard a lot from them while I was out there, and that really, alongside with like my great experience at my internship, really influenced me to want to come back there and work, because I kind of got firsthand experience both like in my job but from my peers as well. So
I think that one thing also, there are a lot of, there's obviously a lot of hard information that you get in an internship. You go to a place and you're doing a job and you experience it, but there's a lot of, just kind of like, softer and squishier information that comes your way also. Are these people happy? Or are the kind of people who do the sort of work that you think you might want to do. It's sometimes interesting to just get a close-up look, and I think these spots, offer that opportunity as well. It's also a good idea in any organization that you find yourself inside of. Somebody on the panel spoke about, this kind of three-dimensional experience, wanting to do one thing but wanting to understand the other side of it. And the more, regardless of what you choose to do, the more comprehensive your understanding of how it's made and done and how it gets out in the world, the more that you get that, the more effective that you'll be. Because for one thing, like later on in your life, like nobody can bullshit you, like nobody can say, oh, this is how it gets done. But if you've seen it, you know how it gets done. And even if you're doing something different, you can, you can make the point that there is another way to do it. Also, there's, it creates ideas of, possible collaboration and cooperation. If you understand the problems that somebody's having with something that you need, you have a better opportunity to offer potential solutions. So, even as, in your mind, you may have a kind of laser focus on what you might want to do at the moment, and even what you're being asked to do specifically at one of these spots. I strongly recommend, just kind of looking at the big picture a little bit and seeing what else you can learn. It might, you might also, it might light you up in ways that, you didn't anticipate. Yes. We need, just for the sake of.
All right. Hey, guys.
There you are.
I'm wondering if you guys did an internship away from home, like in another city, how did you guys figure out the living situation there?
Airbnb is pretty good.
same, yeah.
Student housing is also pretty cheap. I'd stayed in the Berkeley co-ops, and I met a lot of people through them. So if you're in Berkeley or the Bay, definitely look into those.
I was in New York, and I'm from Jersey, so I commuted for about half the time. But then there was a month where I have a lot of friends at NYU who weren't there for the summer, so was able to slip into one of their apartments for a little bit, which worked out.
Similarly, I was also in New York, so I stayed with a family friend for the first few weeks until one of my friends in NYU left her apartment, and then I just stayed at her apartment.
Yeah, I think also, obviously, we're not real estate agents, but, Mingo and RJ would, look into situations and try to, help you out. I mean, obviously, everybody knows it's tough to go into a place maybe where you haven't even spent a lot of time and try to find a place to live. But we'll do whatever we can to make that a smooth process for you. Let me go back to the panel if there are no questions at the moment. Could you talk a bit about maybe the kind of best, most helpful, most exciting thing that occurred during your internship, and then maybe also the thing that was the biggest challenge for you, the thing that you had to kind of struggle with, and how you overcame it.
Okay, so I'll start. One of the most exciting things for me, so there's like a huge book expo every summer in New York So I got to go for an entire day, which was pretty cool. I like took Julie, who was the boss, I like took her press pass, and she was like, "Yeah, just go to the book expo." So I pretty much walked around for the whole day, and it's every publisher and bookseller has a booth, and they are exhibiting the titles that they're going to be selling that year and giving away free stuff to promote the books. So that was really fun. But probably the most challenging and unassumingly helpful thing that I learned was how to use InDesign. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the platform, but pretty much they said by the end of the summer you should know how to make like a sell sheet, which is something else that they send out to bookstores so bookstores can choose which books to get, but it has to be designed on InDesign. So that was a lot of YouTube tutorials and a lot of going back and forth with the marketing assistant, her saying, no, like, this doesn't look right, you have to do this, you should do that. So just even to get out like one sell sheet would take me several weeks just to learn how to use the program.
I'd say the coolest thing for me was my boss actually really cared about my input on shows that were happening as they were happening, if they were in rehearsals or they were in previews. And there was a stretch of a couple days where every morning the creative team was sending the producers rewrites and new pages. And every morning he'd ask me, say, "Did you see the new pages? Did you see the new pages?" And so I had comments on it one day and why I thought it should be this way, not that way, and he agreed with me. And I thought it was really interesting also that the executive producers and producers of a show were getting as much creative input as they were with the creative team, but that's just on a show-by-show basis and how they run. But ultimately, it was the comment that I brought up with him that made the creative team decide to go with his way, that they thought it was the best way to do it. So that was really cool that he actually thought enough of my suggestion to say it to them. So things like that. The most challenging thing was honestly probably setting up conference calls. I don't know why. That was really difficult for some reason. It was very stressful because there would be like 5 very important people who would need to talk, and it would be on you to set up that call. So that was just stressful.
Hughes, what about you?
Yeah, so probably the best part of the internship was the days where I would get to go on set whenever the company was in production. There were 3 commercial sets while I was there, and they were all shot by David Gelb, who directed Jiro Dreams of Sushi. I don't know if you guys know that. But that was just very cool. I got to observe the whole process on a professional commercial set. And yeah, it's very similar to any other type of set that you'd run into, just on a much shorter timeline. So that was really cool. Probably the biggest challenge is like in production, and especially as an intern in production, you have to do a lot of jobs that aren't necessarily the prettiest jobs in the world, like digging through storage units or, cleaning cabinets, stuff like that. And just kind of being able to find like value in those experiences, and which I did by the end of the summer, like was a very, like a challenge that I feel like I had to overcome. So.
Yeah, if I may, just to expand on that a little bit, when you're in those situations, and somebody's giving you a task that, obviously, your very expensive education is designed to prevent you pretty much from having to do. It's important to keep in mind that nobody's going to give you more to do if you don't do basic things well. If you don't demonstrate like your willingness and ability to be like kind of a team player and get in there and do what has to get done. And when you do that, then you get like kind of more interesting stuff to do because people know that they can rely on you. If you demonstrate like you're too good, too cool, too whatever to do the basic stuff, go run an errand or clean out a storage area or something like that, people just kind of roll their eyes and forget about you. Becomes like, we can't count on this person. It's just, they have jobs that they're dealing with the politics and the realities of their work on a daily basis. And, you're introducing another element of that is not why you're there. You're there to kind of make everybody's life easy. And, the benefits that you accrue from that will increase the more that you do that. So having a kind of positive attitude about, some of these basic things is valuable and important, I think, to make make these kinds of internships successful. Who hasn't gone yet?
One of the best experiences was my whole work I got invited to do my first reading at a bookshop in San Francisco, and my entire work came to watch it with me. They were all super supportive and super into it. It was a really lovely experience. But the worst thing probably was I had to learn how to. I knew how to bike, but the Berkeley hills are really steep, and the cars go really fast. So it was a steep learning curve, and I got there, but it was a challenge.
Very similar to you. The people who kind of ran my company really cared about our opinions and then the opinions of all the interns. Like I would like hand in a coverage, and like Allison Greenspan would like just walk right out of the office and be like, "What'd you think of that?" And I'd be like, "I don't know." She's like, "Come in my office now." Just like sit down and like talk with her for like 15 minutes about like a book that I didn't even like, which was like very cool. It was also very cool towards the end of the summer when the Goldbergs kind of started the production, so I got to go to a few table reads, which was awesome because I really liked the show and it was just a cool experience. Biggest challenge though, I think, it was definitely staying motivated to like keep reading like the mountains of stuff that you were given. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't like a crazy amount of reading, but when you finish like a 300-page book that you're not wild about, and then you write like however many pages on it, and then they turn around and give you another one that like it gets to be like a little daunting.
It's like school.
So like it's definitely not the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely like it is a mindset to stay motivated, to stay attentive, to make sure that you're doing good work, to make sure that you're still giving every book and script that you read the attention that it really deserves.
Yeah, I mean that kind of idea of staying motivated, staying focused, keeping at the forefront, why you're there, and what you can gain from things maybe that you don't even realize at the time. There's also, depending, especially in kind of creative places, I think, interns often can have a pretty big impact. Remember, I worked on staff at Rolling Stone for about 10 years, and I remember we had an intern from Berkeley, and he was, had this kind of California attitude. He was, cheerful and, just like, as opposed to us who were, just kind of all, just kind of ego-ridden and sullen and, off doing whatever it was that we were doing. And he organized like a softball team, that we all participated in, he goes, "Oh, we just came in one day and it's just like, oh, that there's a kind of media softball league." And we're like, "Oh, yeah?" And he goes, "Yeah, and we can go play like the Letterman people. Like the game is Thursday at 5:00, so and it's up in Central Park." And we're like, "Oh, all right," and there's everybody just showed up, and he was like running this team. If you, if people like you and you're just kind of, find your way to, spend time there and maybe get to know people a little bit socially and in situations that aren't just do this, do that, or here I did it. A lot of things that are fun can happen and grow out of these situations. Do anyone have any thoughts or additional questions? Well, maybe we should go through some advice or suggestions that you would have to the assembled crowd here that might prove helpful.
Yeah, so my main advice, I think, is that it's easy with these creative positions to get kind of swept up in what the actual creating is. Like, if you're applying for a production company, you can think, oh, I'm going to be making movies, or I'm going to be shaking hands with directors, or doing things like that. And I think kind of what's more important to these companies is what role you can fill in a much smaller scale, and what small changes and small contributions you can make. Kind of like what I was talking about earlier with just being able to accept any task that you're assigned happily and cheerfully, and being a motivated, energetic employee. So I think that's a good way to narrow your mindset down and kind of figure out like what exactly you're looking to do. So
I'd say always say yes kind of thing, even if it's a terrible job to do. Just like always say yes, always say it with a smile, because I don't know, it definitely helps build relationships, it helps build trust. And also like you can learn so much from these internships, and the employers are so happy to give you advice to like help you along the way. But it's if you're kind of like not willing to do the things that they ask, they're going to be less willing to offer advice to like help you understand and help you navigate where you are. And also, there's a very fine line between like, yes, like you want to ask them all this information, but it's also like they do have a job to be doing. So it's finding the balance between wanting to get their advice, but also like pushing a little too hard, and like, because you like when you're there, you don't want to be a pester to them, but like you also like want to get the most that you can. So it's about finding that balance and always being happy, always being cheerful, and like always be willing to help.
I guess going off of that, I think also there's nothing wrong with, in the beginning of your experience, kind of being clear about what you want to learn and what you want to get out of the experience. So, whether that's really focusing in on one thing or being more general, most of the times, at least in my experience and at downtown, they're very perceptive to that. So if you say, I really want to spend some time doing this, learning, this program, this software, they're pretty accommodating to that. Yes, they'll give you side projects to do, which, again, you always say yes to. But don't be afraid to say, I really want to learn how to do this. I really want to focus in on doing this this week, just so at the end of the day you feel like you learned something at the end of your experience, versus just kind of doing whatever they tell you. That way, every place up here is a small company, so normally they can be pretty accommodating to that.
It might be like a kind of simple one or sound dumb, but just be honest in your application, in your cover letter, in your interviews. Even if you don't think you're the perfect best fit for a position, be honest about what your interests are. And so in my case, it was just the interviews that I had were very just good conversations about what I was interested in and what I was thinking of for a career. And it also gives them, as you go into it, an idea of how they can frame what tasks they give to you, similarly to what you want to get out of the experience. So yeah, just be yourself on the application.
I guess try to go somewhere you've never really lived before. It's a super reorienting experience to like have a 9 to 5, to be somewhere you don't know anyone, and to be trying to make it in the world you want to be in. And I think it's a super, it adds a kind of drive, and like it makes the stakes higher, and it's just so much more fun when you don't know what you're doing and you're trying your best.
Make an effort also. I think, by the way, that all of that was really smart advice. The other thing is, be sure once these things wrap up that you stay in touch with the people that you worked with. And even just something basic. I mean this is this doesn't happen all the time, but I remember very specifically there was again when I was working at Rolling Stone, there was an intern there who for a while was kind of helping my assistant, and she was great, she was smart, she was fun, and but I wasn't like tracking her every day, and I didn't know what she was about. And then suddenly August rolls along, and she just dropped by my office and said, "Oh, gee, it's my last day. I just wanted to say goodbye. It was great. It was fun." And I said, "Oh, great. Yeah, sure. Why don't we stay in touch?" And just knowing that she was leaving, by an incredible coincidence, the next day, my assistant resigned. Like, she got another job. And, so this girl became my assistant. And I wouldn't, if she just disappeared, I can't honestly say she would necessarily have been at the top of my mind. I just would have put the word out to some friends or something. But, the fact that she just came by, I knew she was leaving, I wanted to try to do something to help her, and then a spot opened up. All the stars aligned. So, just for those little kind of social niceties, which are, valuable in their own regard, but, could also, just keep you at the forefront of somebody's thinking. Because, look, any place, all of these places, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of work that people have to do. These creative worlds, can look pretty glamorous sometimes, but everybody works their ass off, and they aren't necessarily always, your standing in that world, isn't necessarily always at the top of the list. But if you, in small ways, just kind of keep yourself in the sidelines, that can work too. All right. Well, look. Unless there's any other questions that people have, we can... Oh, do we have one? Great. Right here up front.
Thank you. This is just a minor question. What was the type of dress code that you all had during the work?
It varies. At I got one of my jobs, it was like full suit, which was terrible. But at here it was just like, they basically said, like, don't wear sneakers, don't wear shorts, like, don't look like garbage kind of thing. Just like, I don't know, just like business casual.
I would say where I was working was very casual. You could definitely wear jeans. I wouldn't say wear shorts, but, you could wear sneakers as long as they wear running shoes. So as long as you, like, looked presentable, like kind of like, I guess, what you would wear to class, or like if you were going out to lunch with your parents, that was fine, but like very casual.
I showed up in, I didn't know what the dress code was, so I showed up in a suit the first day and was like way overdressed, but I'd rather be that than underdressed, I guess. So in the rest of the time, it was just business casual.
Yeah, I was also sort of similar to your experience, like just casual, don't wear shorts, dress as you would normally, but, stay polished.
Yeah. I truly had no dress code. I wore shorts. It was California.
Yeah, I think the best way, err on the side of being a little too conservative, I think is the best advice, if you're unsure. And then pay attention to how people are dressed around you. If everybody's showing up in suits, it's probably a good idea to, step up your game. If, everybody's more relaxed, then you can be more relaxed. But I wouldn't try to, it's not the time to make a statement, It's,
yeah, the poets.
Of course. Yeah.
Can I just steal your mic?
Yeah, go for it.
So we told you not to ask about applications, but I think a lot of you probably do have questions. So I thought I'd just do a few general comments. And then if you have really specific things, you can certainly talk to RJ or me. Number one, make sure you don't have typos in your application. It's really, really important, because we get so many really great ones that if there's one word spelled wrong, if your grammar isn't right, it's really important. So have your friends read them out loud. Don't do it the night before. It's important. Number two, do a little research on what you're applying for. You can see a company name that's a huge company and think you're applying for one thing, but the department you're actually going to be working in is entirely different. And it just doesn't end up working. So do a little research. Make sure you apply to the ones that you really want to be at. And then really speak to why you would bring something to that company, how you would bring something, and why you want to work there. If you do those things in your application, you have a really good chance of rising to the top.
Just to expand on one of those points, I think also, people want to feel good about where they work, and so if you can genuinely compliment, if you, I don't know, you're applying to a publication and there are particular stories or something, or projects that they've done that are meaningful to you. I think people like to see that and feel like what they're doing has made an impact. So, I wouldn't fake it. Often it's not even a good strategy. I mean, the morality of it aside, but if you can genuinely bring across why you want to be there in a way that speaks directly to the work that's being done at the place, I think that really does, make your application stand out.
I might say one more thing about applications, and it's building off of what you're saying. It's very important to show that you're informed and excited about the companies that you're interested in working at, but equally so, you have to balance it with your own experience and literally think about it that while this is a great company doing awesome things, you're applying to a person that's trying to fill a job. So talk about the stuff that you've done in other internships or in classes or even before Penn that really fit what you think they're looking for in a day-to-day practical way. Find a way to balance your excitement and your passion by also talking about the club you're in, and the things you're doing are exactly, like you're saying, are exactly what you might be doing when you're actually producing a show. Try to bring it back to the practical as well, because when it's too much about, I've always wanted to be a filmmaker my entire life, for 3 out of the 4 paragraphs of your cover letter, I think it's hard for the companies to really get a sense of your practical abilities, and that's a balance. So.
And one page cover letter.
Yes.
Well, I guess thank you all for coming, and thanks, of course, to the panel. And people will probably be lingering a little bit if you have, more personal questions you'd like to ask anybody here. But thank you so much. Bye-bye.